Paul Macetta. Welcome back to 30 Days of Persuasion Plays. Today's lesson, something you might not be aware of, and that is that people do not like when you disagree with them. People do not like when you disagree with them. Think about how you feel when someone disagrees with you. Oftentimes, people get so agitated when you disagree with them because they feel like you're disagreeing with them is an attack somehow on their intelligence or their value system or their belief system. And they almost feel like the disagreement is a personal attack. And so in the game of influence, persuasion, human communication, we have to learn how to create rapport with people. We got to learn how to create a synergy with people. And by disagreeing with people, you do the complete opposite of all of those things. You don't create any rapport, you don't create any synergy, you don't create any sort of connection with people. And so what we need to do is figure out a way to keep people in agreement with us most of the time when we're trying to influence and persuade them. So, 3 tips I have for you today are these. Number 1, reserve judgment. Reserve judgment. Now, I talk about judgment in a couple of other videos, but the fact of the matter is that we all judge people all of the time. It's a natural thing. People that tell you that it's shallow or that it's immoral or that it's not the right thing to do are basically telling you that like breathing air isn't the right thing to do. And what I mean by that is that judging people is a natural process that we all go through. You have to remember something. We started off as these primitive creatures that were constantly defending and protecting our resources. Now, even though we've evolved from that, there's still a very small part of our brain, the oldest part of our brain, called the reptilian brain, which is responsible for our flight or fight responses. And that part of the brain gets activated every once in a while, and it's there to protect us. It's there to shield us from threats. And so anytime we meet somebody new, that part of our brain gets activated subconsciously, and we subconsciously need to decide whether or not this person is going to subtract from our resources or add to our resources. And we do this in the first 5 to 7 seconds of meeting people, and we do it completely subconsciously. Yes, it happens. We are all judging people. But what the master communicator can do that separates him or her from the average or the poor communicator is that they're aware that this is going on. They're aware that they're going to judge people. Once they do, they reserve that judgment. They put it aside. So in the process of trying to influence or persuade someone else, they may hear or see something that completely contradicts their value system or their belief system. But instead of getting hung up on that and in the process starting to disagree with the other person, they reserve that judgment. They put that aside. They don't let that bother them. They don't let that get the best of them, which is something that I see a lot of people fail to do. They're in the process of communicating with somebody. The other person says something that completely contradicts their belief system, and because they feel like they need to defend that, because they feel like they're being attacked on some level or another, they feel they need to defend it. They take it personally, and what happens? The process of influential communication falls apart. And so the very first thing that we got to do is we got to learn to reserve that judgment. We may have it, but you don't need to vocalize or express it or start fighting with people on it or disagreeing with them. Because the more you disagree with somebody, no matter how irrelevant the thing that you're disagreeing with them may be in comparison to what you're actually talking to them about, it doesn't matter. People don't like when you disagree with them. So step 1 is to reserve that judgment. The second thing that you want to do is use something called yes sets. And so what yes sets are, very simply, are phrases or questions that you ask the person that you are pretty close to 100% sure that they will say yes to. And so the reason why you want to do that is because when you're communicating with somebody, the more you can get them to say yes, during that interaction, the more likely they are to say yes to your request, simply because you've got them now into a pattern of saying yes. And so what you want to do is just ask them questions that you're sure they're going to say yes to. If you notice they have a Rolex on, oh, is that a Rolex? Yes. Oh, I see you have two children, a boy and a girl. Is that right? Yes. Or if you see that they drove a Mercedes into the parking lot. Oh, I see you drove a Mercedes. Or you drive Mercedes, huh? Yes. Get them to say yes. You want to start putting phrases or questions in front of them that you're almost certain that they will say yes to. Because the more you can get them to say yes during your presentation or your communication cycle with them, the more likely they're going to say yes when you ask them to comply with you. Next thing you want to use is a hypnotic language pattern called the agreement pattern. And what the agreement pattern does is just simply agrees with people even when you may disagree with them. So there are going to come points where you are having a conversation with somebody and you disagree with something that they said and it is relevant to the conversation. So in the beginning I talked about you're having a conversation with somebody, you're communicating with them, you're selling them, you're pitching them, you're in a communication cycle with this person and they say something that contradicts your beliefs, but it's not directly related to what you're talking about. And so you push it to the side, you forget about it. It's not relevant to the context or the situation, so you forget about it. But now they say something that is relevant to the context or the situation. And so now you need to address it. But if people don't like when you disagree with them, how do you disagree with them? Or how do you get your point across, I should say, without disagreeing with them? Well, you do it by using something called the agreement pattern. And the agreement pattern is simply when you say to a person, I agree with you and would like to add this. I agree with you, but I would like to add this. And so all you're simply doing is agreeing to something that they said. Now, here's the thing. You may be thinking, well, what if I really just disagree with what they're saying? Should I tell them that I agree with what they said even though I don't agree with it? No, you don't have to do that. You can agree with something else. You can agree that they just said something, right? You're not necessarily agreeing with what they said. You're agreeing that they said something. You're agreeing that that event took place. It's just simply a way of keeping the communication cycle in a stage of agreement and then adding your particular piece to it. And so that's how you can contradict people, or you can kind of go against what they're saying without blatantly disagreeing with them. Because the moment you blatantly disagree with them, you destroy your rapport with them, you destroy your connection with them, and then you got to work to build all that stuff back up again, and it wastes a lot of time. So remember, people don't like when you disagree with them. So number one, reserve judgment, right? Especially if you're finding that you disagree with something that has nothing to do with what you're talking about anyway. It has nothing to do with the context, environment, or situation. Don't even bring it up. Second is use yes sets to keep them in a state of agreement. And third, if you find yourself in a situation where you need to contradict or correct something that they said, utilize the agreement pattern. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it, leave a comment, and make sure you subscribe.